Good evening, students. So today we are going to study the second chapter, session 2, education in multi-ethnic societies. Good evening, students. Right. So first of all, we have to understand what is multi-ethnic societies. So our country also multi-ethnic society. So if we have a different religion, different ethnic group, so definitely we will have different culture. So that type of society will be named as multi-ethnic societies. So why, you all must be thinking why we are learning education in multi-ethnic societies, right? So, so this subject is comparative education. So in multi-ethnic society, how education have to be uh, this given to the students or planned, right? Because the ethnic is different, religion is different, language is different. So how they are going to give the education to the students? Under this subject, you must know what is plural. Nature of society can be based on ethnicity, language, and religion. So our country also is a multi-ethnic country. So there are 3 languages, main languages, and religion, Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, right? Those religions are available. And ethnicity, Tamil, Sinhala, Muslim, Burgher, right? In those ethnicity also there. So in this chapter, right, you are going to learn Sri Lanka also with another 3 countries, right? So the early days was not that peaceful in those multi-ethnic countries because they are very racist at that time, right? Especially here, there are countries you have to study is South Africa, USA, and New Zealand, right? Those 3 with Sri Lanka. So these 4 countries are multi-ethnic societies, right? In USA, white Americans who are descendants of English, French, German, or Spanish ancestors. So that group is there in USA. The other group is Indians who are the indigenous people of North America. Right? So indigenous people also there. And white Americans, descendants of English, French, German, Spanish ancestors is also there. And another group, Afro-Americans who are descendants of migrants from Africa. So under America, USA, so you can, there are 4 type of different groups, right? That means ethnic group. So the last one is Asians, such as Japanese, Chinese, and Indians, etc. Right? So there are 4 different ethnic groups. So definitely their language will be different, religion will be different, right? So USA is also a multi-religious society, People of USA profess different varieties of Christianity, while others believe in other religions such as Buddhism, Hinduism, and Islam. Right? So there are four type of ethnicity and religion, and also these languages, right? So definitely each group will have their own mother tongue. With that, even in Sri Lanka, you all are learning in mother tongue, and the English also a compulsory subject. And earlier it was said second language and then link language. Now uh, English is a national language, right? So USA is also a multilingual society. A large number of languages such as English, Spanish, German, French, Italian, and Chinese are used by its people. Right? So how many languages are using there? English, Spanish, German, French, Italian, and Chinese. So 6 languages used by USA people. That means ethnic groups. So the problem of education. So there are a lot of languages, lot of religion, and ethnic groups are there. So all these students must be in one class. So the problem of education that emerge from pluralism differ from one another according to each of the above aspects. Right? So religion is different, language is different, ethnic is different, how they are going to be in one class. Right? So for practical convenience, however, we will choose problem in each area and discuss them separately here. So in this session, firstly, you will examine how multi-ethnic societies evolved and the ethnic composition of a new few such societies. So how these multi-ethnic societies evolve. So now you will study the multi-ethnic society selected by us. That means in this module, they have selected to teach these multi-ethnic societies. They selected 4 countries, right? Which those countries are having multicultural societies. So, apartheid policy in South Africa and the segregation that has resulted from it in education. Right, so South Africa is a very racial country. Even Gandhi was educated there and worked there, right? So he also influenced and a lot of this racial problem there, because in that society they are giving preference for whites, not for blacks, right? So so Right, so can you see this slide? Sumaya, can you see this slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So apathy means what? What it means and who is affected. So in South Africa, so they had this policy, apathy, right? Wrong for South Africans, apathy, wrong for Palestinians, right? So here, so this is especially a racial segregation. So racism is there at that time, right? So they are famous for racial segregation at that time. So here you can see whites are correct, blacks are not allowed, right? So the definition of apartheid is a system of legal racial segregation enforced by the National Party government in South Africa between 1948 and 1994, right? So 1994 means it's a very recent time. So from 1948 to 1994, they have enforced this legal racial segregation called apartheid. So under which the rights of majority black inhabitants of South Africa were curtailed and minority rule by whites was maintained. So they have this enforced a rule, right? Actually, it's a legal act. So they are maintaining the status of white. The different groups were very much separated from each other. The minority white population had the rule and control of the country. So the population, my white population is minority, even though they are the people who are ruling the country. So the other countries came to know this and they boycott South African goods, right? And they're asking, stop apartheid now, right? And after the National Party gained power in South Africa in 1948, so the National Party only started this national legal action. Its all-white government immediately began enforcing existing policies of racial segregation under a system of legislation that is called apartheid. Under apartheid, non-white South Africans, a majority of the population, would be forced to live in separate areas. So the blacks have to be separate, right? So they can't live with whites. Public facilities also different, and the contact between the two groups would be limited, right? So that they were already separated, whites and blacks. Not only the race, the ethnicity, right? So even the place they are living, right? And schools, jobs, everything separated. So birth of apartheid, racial segregation and white supremacy had become central aspects of South African policy long before apartheid began. So already they had this, right? The racism they already had, but in 1948 only the legal action came. The controversial 1913 Land Act passed 3 years after South Africa gained its independence marked the beginning of territorial segregation by forcing Black Africans to live in reserves and making it legal for them to work as sharecroppers. So even in Tamil community, right, we know that we have caste. So especially in India, it is almost worse. So why the caste? According to their job only, the caste is deciding, right? Even here for the blacks, the work is sharecroppers. Opponents of the Land Act formed the South African National Native Congress, which would become the African National Congress. So if a free society cannot help the many who are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich. So this is John F. Kennedy, who is the former president. So if a free society cannot help the many, because in that South Africa, the population, Black population is more, right? The less population of whites are dominating, right? So the help the many who are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich. And here, so don't support apathy, right? So the worldwide people realize, right? This legal, this legislation is not good, right? So here you can't marry a white, no mix with white and black, and even they can't have good connection, friendship, right? So ban marriages between white people of other races and prohibited sexual relations between Black and white South Africans. The Population Registration Act of 1950 provided the basic framework for apartheid by classifying all South Africans by race, including Bantu. Right? So there is a society called Bantu, Black Africans, colored, mixed race, and white. Right? So Bantu, colored, and white. A fourth category, Asian. First category, Bantu, colored. Second one, third one, white. The fourth category, Asian, meaning Indians and Pakistan, who later added. In some cases, the legislation split families. Parents could be classified as white, while their children were classified as colored. Right? See the racism in that country at that time. And the position to apathy. Resistance to apartheid was South Africa took many forms over the years, from non-violent demonstrations, protests, and strikes to political action, and eventually to armed resistance. So together with South Indian National Congress, the ANC organized a mass meeting in 1952, during which attendees burned their passbooks. A group calling itself the Congress of the People adopted a Freedom Charter in 1955, asserting that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black or white. So the government broke up the meeting and arrested 150 people. Right? So even here, not for racism, so against the economic crisis, you had the experience, right? So how they fight for the things and how what government did for them. So in the same way, those days they have done, right? So here you can see black students are punished more harshly and more frequently than white students for the same offenses. So you can see the difference, how they are behaving and how they are treating, right? White and blacks. So you can see the differences. And apartheid comes to an end. In 1976, when thousands of black children in Soweto, a black township outside Johannesburg, demonstrated against the Afrikaans language requirement for black African students, the police opened fire with tear gas and bullets. The United Nations General Assembly had denounced apartheid in 1973, right? So this act denounced in 1973, right? But it was there from 1980 or 1948 to 1994, but the act was denounced in 1973. And in 1976, the UN Security Council voted to impose a mandatory embargo on the sale of arms to South Africa. In 1985, the United Kingdom and United States imposed economic sanctions on the country. So here you can see contaminated with apartheid, boycott South African goods. So a lot of countries against this law. And here you can see they are fighting against this apartheid, right? So they are May and Apartheid Day, right? May 1st, right? So they are May 1st is normally it's this working people's day, right? So so they are having a this they are giving pressure, right? And they are showing this hatred against the apartheid law, right? They're under pressure from the international community, the National Party government of Botha, so to institute some so now the pressure is more of the countries against the apartheid. So what happened was including addition of the past laws and of interracial sex and marriage, a new constitution with enfranchised blacks and the other racial groups. Effect 1994. We have made some changes in this apartheid law. So it came to an end in 1994. An election year led to a coalition government with one white majority, making the official end of the system, right? So the South African people suffered with this apartheid legal system from 1948 to 1994, right? So it came to an end in 1994. So there were 4 groups classified by the government. Black, which is 71% of the population. White, which was 16% of the population. The third group, colored, who were a mixture of races from black, white, and Asian races and nations. They were 10% of the population, and the other is Asian, Asian population. So here you can see even the red rooms, right? Different white and different colored and the people, right? So see the how those people showed racism on people.
Excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am.
And segregation.
Ma'am,
right? So
ma'am,
division. Okay.
ma'am, can you scroll down?
Yes. Yes. Yes, Phil.
Ma'am, can you scroll
It's not
down?
clear here.
Can you scroll down, ma'am?
I can you. Ah, okay. Right, right. Okay. Right. So segregation during apartheid, the white minority population controlled the country. I mean, where a person might live, go to school, but jobs. So maybe that, right? So I had power failure from 6:30 to 7:24, right? So all of a sudden I came and joined. That's what I didn't on the camera also because uh, the, due to power failure, sometimes you can't hear me, right? Right. Uh, so have you seen this person?
Excuse me, ma'am.
So it shows that internet connection is not stable because of the. Yeah. So who is this person?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Very person. His name is life in Nelson Mandela. So Nelson Mandela, African National Congress, which had been outlawed since 1960. To victory the South Africa's first free elections, 1994. Because of this election, the minority population would no longer control the lives of South Africans. Right? So a black person become president. So after that, uh, already the party came to an end, right? So after Nelson Mandela appointed as president, they had peaceful life, right? So uh, so we are thinking we only having problems, right? But every country have these type of problems. So that ethnic problem, if it is culturally, there can be these type of ethnic problems arise, right? Uh, So this is in South Africa. So we are going to learn about USA regarding this multicultural society, and also New Zealand. So even New Zealand have um, these people called Maoris, right? So Aborigines are there in Australia. So the original people also there. But in that country, those people are normally called as minority, right? So their lifestyle is different. Even the culture is different. So they are dressing in different way, and their life pattern is also different. Right? So here you can see, name a multi-ethnic society in Asia, excluding Sri Lanka. Can anyone answer for this question? Name. You can't give as answer. You can't. Sri Lanka cannot be answer. Other than that, can anybody name one country in Asian region, a multi-ethnic society?
Japan, madam.
Japan. So what type of ethnic groups are there in Japan? What about our closest nation, India? There are 16 languages, national languages, and their culture, right, and ethnicity and religion, right, all different, right? Anyway, actually, I don't know much about Japan. I know about Japan education, but um, so I don't know anything about the multicultural. Is that country is a multicultural society, right? So without knowing that, I can't say anything, right? We'll see, right? We'll find out whether that is also a multicultural society. That means which people of different ethnic groups professing different religions and speaking different languages live. So in Japan, it's a Buddhist, most of the people are Buddhist, right? And I don't know whether there are any different language people are living there, right? And indicate two problems related to education that have resulted from multi-ethnicity in that society. So think of ethnicity or race, right? Say in India, Dalit, that is the lower caste, right? So in early stage, they are not giving any job to that these people, Dalit people, right? And even the education is very less, right? Later, the government gave a quota, right? This much of people all among Dalit also have to recruit, right? So it is that is also come under racism, right? And name two measures of legislation that have influenced interethnic relation in Sri Lanka. So in Sri Lanka also we have this problem now, right? So we had more than 30 years, that means 3 decades war. right? So if that kind of problem is there in a country, right? People can't live peacefully, right? Right. This is a pre-test. And here you can see in USA, population ethnicity, white Americans, early settlers such English, French, German, Spanish. In South Africa, whites, descendants of English and Dutch. The Boers, indigenous people, Bantus, Hottentots. Color, Indians and Malays, right? So UK, English, West Indian, Asians, 3 categories. New Zealand, whites, indigenous people, Maoris. Australia, whites, Asians. Asian means Indians, Chinese, Vietnamese. Indigenous people, Aborigines. Right? These are the categories they have. Right? So in the above table, we have indicated the composition of population in selected countries. So it will be clear to you that there are indigenous people. Right? So please read this. Just give me 1 minute. I will open the gate and come. Okay. Right, okay. Most of the countries, right? So they have this type of multi-ethnic groups. So what is more important is the division of power among these ethnic groups more than their numbers. So in most societies, example, Australia, UK, USA, political and economic power is exerted by the majority. In 1990, the minority can be more powerful. That means whites. So now you know regarding multi-ethnic society. That means a different ethnicity, different religion, and different languages. So So under this subject, comparative education, why we are talking about these multi-ethnicity and educational problems, right? So how the education will be there, right? Even our Sri Lankan peoples also migrating to these countries, right? So how they are managing their education. So in considering the influence of multi-ethnicity on the emergence of educational problems, we need to remember some of the objectives that were expected to be achieved through education. Right? So the other point is equality of educational opportunity. Right? So this is only creating problem whether the government is giving equal opportunity for every ethnic groups, right? So education is accepted as a basic human right that should be within reach of everyone in a society. Whatever the ethnicity of a person, he or she should have an equal opportunity to receive an education. So, to develop human development, right? So why education is compulsory? Why they are giving free education, right? Through education only we can come up in our life, right? So if they are not permitting education for such so few ethnic group, right? So uh, it doesn't mean that education for all and also equality in educational opportunity. So it's a human right. And education for national integration, even our Sri Lankan national objective is national integration and social cohesion. Right? Through education only we can achieve that, right? Uh, so education is believed to be a medium of national cohesion. National cohesion means people have to live together, right? Maybe they are from different ethnic groups, different language and different religion, but they have to live together. Many believe that by doing so, citizens from different ethnic backgrounds will be able to suppress their ethnic loyalties and to have a sense of patriotism for the country. So normally, maybe we are different in the ethnicity, religion, or this language, but we are Sri Lanka, right? So that patriotism have to be there. When these educational aims are not being realized, it is likely that disparities, suspicion, and distrust will surface among different groups in a society and lead to different types of crises and conflicts. Right? So earlier, even in Sri Lanka, the language barrier, right? In some area, people, right, can't understand the other languages, right? So we have three main languages: English, Sinhala, and Tamil. So, so few group, the group, some group of people, they know only one language or two language, right? So that is also a reason or cause, right, for misunderstanding. Educational policies in multi-ethnic societies. So how they are formulating policies, educational policies. So we saw that educational policies in multi-ethnic societies vary from one country to another. In addition, within the same society, policies different from one historical period to other. Even the policies can change. Among the policies adopted by multi-ethnic societies are the following: segregation, assimilation, and multicultural education, intercultural education, bicultural education. Anyway, they have to cater these differences. So, study of selected multi-ethnic societies. Now we have, I have explained the apartheid system. So it is an acceptance of the apartheid policy by state in 1948. The deterioration of the ethnicity of every South African citizen through a population list, legal prohibition of marriages as well as any illicit relationship between whites and blacks, setting apart prestigious job for whites only, division of urban as well as rural areas into zones, and separate allocation being made to different ethnic groups for residence and entrepreneurial activities. So that segregation is very powerful and very serious, right? So legalization of an entry pass which required any black person to retain an identity card. So they are not these accepting the blacks as a member of that country. Enforcement of segregation for whites and blacks in transport, post office, libraries, cinemas, and theater in Cape Peninsula. So transport, first class is not for blacks, only for whites. And post office also, first preference is for whites. Allocation of representative of blacks in the national and state legislations. So here, this is the summary of this. Apartheid is the segregation of different ethnic groups in separate geographical areas as well as in public places, employment, and politics. Right? So different ethnic groups in separate geographical areas as well as in public places, employment, and politics. So in race, there's no racism there, right? But anyway, the elite group only can go to the school. They are the people can afford to go to, the educated people can only vote. So those are the people, power, and they are the member of parliaments and they are the rulers, right? So all the others, right, are suffered. So Paulo Freire, psychology, the philosopher, he um, educated. That means 3 million people within a short period, right? That means not O level, A level, up to O level, A level, that not that level, but they can read and write, right? So he's very popular of this method, right? And even the other countries also invited him to do that in their country, right? So after that, so they can vote. So they made a big change in racial politics. So why do you think will be the impact of these politic and socio-economic policies on education? So, so do you think that this education will be a soundful, good system, apathy? Right here, you can see separation in education in South Africa. Right, so the 4 groups, 1, 2, Education Act, different acts also passed. Universities Education Act, 1959, and 1963 Colored People Education Act, and 1965 Indian Education Act. So you can see the segregation, not only in the schools, these public places and things, even education also segregated according to the ethnic group. So this is up to 1994. After that, there are a lot of changes have taken place. That means the characteristic feature of South African education was the existence of four subsystems of education. So here, the chance of obtaining a university education for a white child was 100 times greater than for a black African child. Out of the white males, now 49% have received high school certificate. Among the Africans, the percentage was only 8. The ratio of whites to black in South Africa was 1:4. Yet the number of university graduates among the African was only around 5,400, but about 2 million white were university graduates. So from this data, right, information, you can understand how racist they are and how they people from education. Paragraph 3, so there's a small mistake, right? So I don't know why the power is not that stable. So according to the above, it is clear that the non-whites in South Africa have faced discrimination. So this word is very popular in Sri Lanka also at once, right? So the reason for embarking on policies of apathy explained in the following statement of Dr. A. Verwoerd, who later became the Prime Minister of South Africa. So there are four categories in this education separation. There are four groups now. So Bantu Education Act is for Bantu group. The 1950 University Session Act is also different. People, Education Act is something different. Indian Education Act is different. So, the will become the Prime Minister of South Africa, right? Bantu education should be totally based on the local state and the environment of the indigenous community. They are indigenous. It is based on their community. The training and learning which they get through education should conform to the life answers before them. In the so, as I have explained that Dalit, right, cannot considering as lower caste, right? So even in Sri Lanka, municipality people is being named as a lower caste because of their job, right? But in Sri Lanka, there's no much this racism in education. Everyone is able to go to any school, right? Uh, but the popular schools, of course, they are expecting good family background and things, right? So, with such an aim, the whites established a centralized system of education for Bantus. Conditions governing each school were formulated and it became illegal to establish or maintain a school for Bantus without central government approval. So now they are a little bit changing. The minister had service condition of teachers, programs of study, medium of instruction, school fund, and management activities. So the education is under minister, prime minister. So he is making some changes. So it will be clear to you that white attempts were made to separate different ethnic groups through socio-economic policies, educational policies. Socio-economic is mean in level. Educational is mean separate schools and standard level of the schools are different for each. Try to provide education which are deemed suitable different ethnic groups by the ruler. So the rulers taught the black children's curricula through their mother tongue, right? So it's like elite group, right? Whites are like elite. They can learn English, right? But these black children, they have special curricula or in And here you can see this De Long Commission, which collected information on South African education, revealed that only 64.5% of the total government expenditure on education was spent on the education of whites, who comprise 6.4% of population, right? So for the 6.4 population of whites enjoying 64.5% total government expenditure in education. The amount spent on the education of blacks, who are 71.2 of the population, was only about 16.4%. The per capita expenditure of the total expenditure in year 1991 is given below. So whites per capita, 3,739, Indian 2,659, mixed 669, and blacks 930. So these disparities existed all level of the formal education system. And here you can see education was compulsory for all children between the ages of 7 to 16, except for black children. 22% of the black children between ages of 16 to 14 had not entered schooling in 1988. Student-teacher ratio was 41:1 in schools for black children, while in schools for the white, it was 20:1. So of the black students in grade 10 in 1988, the percentage studying physics, mathematics, and technical drawing were 15%, 32, and 3 respectively. So they are not offering good subjects also. In 1980, ratio of white students to black students who had been selected to universities and represented to technical colleges was 10:1. So the less populated white people, they are entering 10, right? But only 1 black is entering with 71.1% of population. So, so there are recent changes have indicated that political, social, and economical forces cannot be combated with apartheid policies. Apartheid policies are demolished, no, that is up to 1994 only, it was there. So in 1980, Manpower Commission of South Africa concluded that to expand the South African economy, high-level manpower should be improved drastically in respect of numbers. So when the working force is blacks, so they argued that any country whose level of industrial development is high cannot afford to retain a majority education. So the population is high for black, 71.1%. Only these white is 16% people. So the majority of the people have to learn, educated. Then only the country will flourish. So by 1990, due to objections within the country as well as economical deterioration, the National Party, which was in power, had to change its policies. According to the new law, state schools could follow 3 models in admitting children of non-whites. Now they are changing the policies. Even the blacks also can accommodate to schools. So model A, to obtain less assistance from the state and become private schools. Model B, to continue as before as state schools, but retaining authority on admission policy. And the third one, model C, to become assisted schools with only teachers' salary being paid by the state. So there are three different kind of schools they establish for non-whites. The reforms proposal made public in June 1991 had identified the three main areas in education which had problems. Shortcomings in the education of blacks in relation to teachers, classroom, and other educational services. The political influence on the education system, which had led to an ethnic-based policy and to several conflicts, opposition, breakdown of discipline in certain group areas. So there is a discrimination only, conflicts and oppositions, breakdowns, discipline, and the problem, everywhere things occur. Provision of educational facilities in a society torn by ethnic and economic. The education training was include the rehabilitation and programs by the National Congress. This is African Congress in 94 after the apathy is considered as a part of the broad national rehabilitation and development program. So so the new government has made education free and compulsory. This is a big change in South Africa because most of the time compulsory for white, not for blacks. So now government has made education free and compulsory for all. But the two main problems in education are physical expansion of education and the social and structural barriers that obstruct access to education, because even though 71 point blacks, right, they are not in good socio-economical status, and there are social structural barriers also with them. Right, so this is exercise 1. So given below is an extract of an article in a newspaper published recently. Right? Please read this. Read this carefully. You have to understand, you have to answer the question also. Right? The questions are given below. Read. So after completing today's lesson, right? So I will request, I will give a homework, right? So we are going to learn 4 countries, multi-ethnic countries. You have to compare those 4 countries, right? So how the educate, so what is the status of those 4 countries, right? So because the problematic multi-ethnic countries only selected, right? So you'll be able to compare in different segments. So this article published in 1996.
நல்லா லீவ் வந்தோடனே ஒருத்தர் புக் பண்ணுவாங்க எங்கேயாவது போறது. எங்க டே ஸ்கூல்ல எத்தனையோ பேர் ட்ரைடம் போற இல்ல அஸ்னட மாப்பிள்ளை மந்திர எலெக்ஷன் எலெக்ஷன் எல்லாம் அடுத்த சனி ஞாயிற்றுக்கிழமை போக சனி ஞாயிற்றுக்கிழமைக்கே வார
So tomorrow and day after tomorrow, I think there were no classes, right? Due to the election. And I think that special education, inclusive education subject is on the 18th, right? Okay, here the plight of South African in 1996. That means they demolished the apartheid, and now government schools have opened the gate for blacks also, right? Anyway, right, in the South African school that had been ordered to destroy the ethnic barriers as an experiment, the black children spent their first day laughing loudly with glee with their newly found white friends. So now only they are mixing. Even though the few children who mix together spend their time happily, the empty chairs in the school, which was once the whites only school, told the unhappy tale of a small town in which the barriers of apartheid had been broken down, but where the rifts of racism still continue. So the policy have changed. Now they are requesting blacks and white have to learn together. They have to be together in the school. The blacks are happy to be with whites, right? But the thing is, white parents are not sending the children to school. Out of 800 children, only 30 students were present, whites were present. So all the other parents had kept the children at home, either due to the unwillingness to allow the children to mix with those of other ethnic groups, or due to the fear of going against the views of the whites. So on Wednesday, 22nd, 96, the Supreme Court rejected the request of the school to permit provisions of a separate education for the children of the Afrikaners of Dutch, French, and German, and ordered that black children also be admitted to the school. So they are rigid in the law. No, all have to be together. All have to learn together, right? So the question, right, just read this question and see whether you can just give one or two answers, one or two lines. In your opinion, what kind of attitudes did the whites in this town hold on mixed education? What type of attitudes they're having? They wanted, they don't like to mix with blacks, right? They don't want inclusive education with any other race. So the whites have to be separate. That's what they are requesting for, separate education. What was the policy of rulers regarding the education of different ethnic groups? The policy, of course, both have to be together in the school. So according to the newspaper report published here, can you expect an improvement of the relations between different ethnic groups in this town through mixed education in schools? So maybe now only 30 students are coming, but later, right, slowly the situation will change, right? So now we know the plight of South African segregation and how they are treating the blacks, right? So white, how they are dominating, and even the education is not giving in a similar way, right? So different people have different type of education, and blacks in mother tongue, and they can't enter the university. Ratio is 10 to 1. If 10 people entered, white people, 10 white people enter to the university, in that only one black can be admitted, right? So those are the education, this plight in South Africa, right? So now I think you will realize, right? So we are thinking only we have problem in our country, but in South Africa also, they had this racism, right? And the severe racism. They are not even consider the indigenous people of that country, right? So now we are moving to United States of America, right? United America also a developed country. South Africa also a developed country. New Zealand also a developed country. Only Sri Lanka is developing country, right? But all are multi-ethnical countries. So, before 1964, just like the blacks in South Africa, the blacks in USA were also looked down upon and segregated because their forefathers were brought as slaves, right? So they brought slaves for work to America, right? So even for Sri Lanka, they brought slaves, right? That means, so they brought people to work from India, right? And likewise, so African people were brought there as slaves for work. So they were looked down upon, right? So Civil Rights Act, discrimination on the basis of ethnicity in the spheres of education, housing and employment, and in the public places, same like South Africa. This act helped to improve the status of Afro-Americans. Right? So why they are enforcing these type of policies? So it will be benefited by Americans. So in USA, although status of black was indicative of their education and socio-economic status, at a time when they were slaves, the concept of equal educational opportunity was not relevant for them. Right? So they are telling and talking about equal opportunity, but it was not done. The Supreme Court judgment given in 1896, same like South Africa, reflects the understanding that prevailed in USA before 19th century. The judgment decreed the whites and blacks should have access to separate but equal school. So still segregation is there. The two types of school differed from each other according to the following characteristic: facilities needed for education, such as buildings, equipment. Even we have segregation and based on facilities in our schools. 1AB schools, type 1 school, type 2 school, national school, right? So the science stream will be in few schools. Up to O-level primary schools are there, right? So here, the Supreme Court pointed out in 1954, in considering the case between Brown versus Board of Education, Topeka, that as the school providing education for different ethnic groups differed from each other, that they were a violation of the Constitution. So the Supreme Court decreed the desegregation of schools should be effected. So yet 10 years later too, only 3% of schools had been desegregated. So continuously for 10 years, it is continuing. That segregation is there. In the southern and border states, only 10% of the black children were studying in the segregated schools, right? So this white-black problem was there in these two countries, USA and South Africa.
What did you put? Ahuna, the dirty cloth.
So the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which was mentioned earlier, also had a direct effect on education. So there are in South Africa, national policy aggregated places are there. Here in USA, Civil Rights Act of 1964. So it empowered the Department of Justice to initiate court action to compel desegregation of schools. So they are now trying to desegregation. Already segregated two types of schools are there. Segregation is there. Now they are trying to desegregate. The Department of Education was given the power to allocate resources in order to resolve problems that ensured with school desegregation. So the government is now trying to give more facilities for schools. The educational institutions which were supported by the federal government were to admit children without taking their background characteristics into consideration. It was decided to stop supporting those institutions which did not conform to this requirement. And residential segregation of ethnic groups. So maintain common schools for Black and white children through school desegregation has not been entirely successful. Even though the government tried to keep them together, it was not successful. So in 1972, the effects of desegregation were evaluated. What this evaluation showed are stated below. In the southern states, only 9.2% of the Black children were studying in the school, which were attended by only Black children. This was 68% less than percentage in 1968. So in the northern states, 11 to 11.2. So that is also only Black people attending schools. So what do these statistical reveal? Right, so the large proportion of Black children still studying in Black school, only schools. So northern states where discrimination was supposed to be less. So due to this discrimination, large number of Blacks migrated to settle down in the northern cities because northern, the discrimination is less. So the people are moving to that place. So thus the northern states had cities with Black belts or Black centers, while the whites settled down around these cities. As a result of this residential segregation, the white and the Black children attended schools which eventually were located in their own areas and therefore became segregated. And other strategies of ensuring equal education opportunities. Now, government is trying to bring them together. So one is Operation Head Start. The areas which had large Black population, a quality preschool education was provided to these children. So they are enhancing the standard of the Black schools. Operational Head Start. And follow through. Here the Operation Head Start was continued throughout the other school levels. So I think this from this table, it's very easy to understand. So multicultural educational approaches. So we have to use, right? Because it's a multi-ethnic setup in schools. So they are going to introduce some multicultural educational approaches. So first one, curriculum reform. Because already they have two separate curriculum for Blacks and white. So here they are going to reform, curriculum reform. They are going to change. Revision of curriculum content or addition of new content. So now they are adding some new content. What type of content? Inclusion of content on different cultural groups in the curriculum in order to develop the ability of viewing curriculum content from a new perspective. So through curriculum, right? So they are adding the culture of both groups. So examples of use important dates and celebration to honor heroes in a culture, preparation of multicultural handbooks and multicultural content, workshop for teachers and administrators, addition of multicultural content to textbooks. So they are adding multicultural setup, how they have to behave, how they have to respect each other, how the people have to uh, help each other and they live peacefully, those things added into the textbook. That is under curriculum reform. The second change, achievement. Students from lower social classes, girls and disabled students, presentation of application of theories and strategies to improve academic achievement of these groups. So special need children also there. So lower social classes, girls and disabled students. Right? So they are presentation of application of theories and strategies to improve academic achievement. Right? So they are using different strategies to teach. Improvement of academic achievement levels of different groups that vary according to ethnicity, culture, gender, status. So how they are going to use learning styles and abilities, programs prepared to suit different learning styles, bilingual, bicultural education programs, programs incorporating languages and culture of Afro-American children, special mathematics and science programs for girls. So now the education is changing. They understood the problem. Because of the segregation, they are not working together, right? So you know that most of the Olympic gold medalists are blacks. All are from America, right? So so they because that origin is from workers. That means they brought workers as slaves, right? So those children also very strengthy, right? Even marathon race, they are the people who are winning. And intergroup education, intergroup. That means the government is trying to join them. Preparation of knowledge, subject content, and procedures to develop democratic intergroup attitudes and values, supporting development of positive attitudes in students towards different ethnic, cultural, and gender groups, and projects to eliminate prejudice towards each other. So they are starting active-based lessons. Programs like the Changing World, integrated classroom and programs following techniques to develop mutual cooperation. So, what is important to note here is that some consider multicultural education as a new teaching. So, they are including multicultural ethnic teaching according to their culture, according to their ethnic, right? So they can learn. So they have included this multicultural education in their timetable also. So after implementing these strategies, that means they are changing the curriculum, and new strategies are implementing. So multicultural concepts are included in the textbook. So even after the implementation of above strategies, peaceful interrelation among ethnic groups or equal educational opportunity have not been fully realized. Because at once you can't make any big changes in anything. Right? So blacks reject the cultural patterns of white Americans because of the very fact of their having been disadvantaged for centuries. So they have the grudge because the whites are always rejected black people, right? So they have the grudge in their mind, and it's very difficult to going closer, right? So Black Power and Black Panthers have sprung up. That several efforts are being taken constantly to prevent the nation being torn apart on the ethnic basis is hopeful feature. Right? So even now, up to now, there are places only blacks are living, and so still they have that black-white issues. Right. So now, New Zealand. So you know that New Zealand is a huge country, but less population. Some parts are very cold, and New Zealand is famous for farms, right? Especially the anchor, what we are they are using as milk powders. Most of the milk powder is producing, and they are sending from New Zealand, right? So original settlers of New Zealand were the Maoris. They were conquered by English. The first formal school in New Zealand was established by the missionaries. Even in Sri Lanka, missionary schools are established in northern area. So that's where they became, that means they are good in studies because of those missionary school. So they were strictly brought up, and the education was good. So the privilege they got, and they excelled in education. So in that same way, New Zealand was established by missionaries until 1847. The medium of instruction was Maori language. So original settlers. Both adults and children studies in these schools. According to the Indigenous School Act of 1867, village schools were established with assistance from the state, and the schools were administered by the Department of Internal Affairs. So we also have Department of Education, Zonal Education, right? Ministry of Education. Likewise, these were the lay schools, and the medium of instruction was English. It was forbidden to use Maori language in these schools. Even though they are Maori indigenous people and they have their own language, but they studied in English. So during this period, education was treated as a medium of facilitate the integration of Maoris called noble savages with the ordinary public. So in 1880, legal procedures of indigenous school introduced European school buildings and European families. So introduced by example, a better lifestyle. So curriculum which was used civilize Maoris in this manner was an 8-year one. So the national primary school curriculum was relaxed and used as a 6-year one. Teaching of English and its usage was continuously emphasized. So colonial rulers expected to restrict the Maoris to isolate rural areas so that they would not be threat to the whites. So again, they are starting the problem. In 1870, the Department of Education revised the curriculum of the indigenous school to emphasize teaching of agriculture. Right? So they are now try to involve in agriculture, this indigenous people. Their objective was to make Maori boys good farmers and Maori girls good housewives through these indigenous schools. Right, so the assignment, do you notice any similarities in the educational policies of the rulers of New Zealand and South Africa? We have seen so many similarities. Right, so the policies, act, and segregation, and so the Maori is the indigenous people. So ultimately what happened was they are teaching agriculture and make them farmers. So in 1940, disagreements arose over the curriculum. The Maori adults aspired for a curriculum with an academic bias for their children, but what they received was a curriculum with manual technical bias. So the syllabus itself different for Maoris, the indigenous people, and whites. So even New Zealand also changed the educational policies in 1930 and early 1940. The Maori population increased rapidly in the urban areas due to intermarriage and ethnically mixed population emerged. In 1955, the Advisory Board of Education made the following recommendations. More attention to be given Maori arts and craft, history and language in all primary schools. Right? Even they are not giving science, maths, right? Arts and crafts, history and language in all primary school. A special officer to be appointed in charge of Maori education. To commence residential training program for skilled occupation in rural areas. To request the research with government support about social, linguistic, and pedagogical factors leading to low educational achievement. So separately, they are preparing curriculum, giving training, everything separately. In 1971, these are very close, not much earlier, right? 1971 means now 2024, maybe 50 years back. The National Advisory Committee on Education was reorganized to ensure majority participation of Maoris. In 1980, this committee proposed the extension of Maori language and educational programs to every primary school. Now only they are learning their mother tongue. As a result, the policy of English medium instruction was relaxed, and in the 4 primary schools and 2 secondary schools, bilingual education with English and Maori languages was started. Right now only they are using bilingual education. Even I think you all heard in Sri Lanka also. Earlier, it was fully English medium, and then after 1959, they switch on to mother tongue education. And again, now they are starting the international school system. English medium was there even in government schools and private schools. So up to 5, they are learning in their mother tongue. And from 6 onwards, they are switch on to English medium. So I think they will keep an exam and selecting students. In grade 6, in Sri Lanka also, they started bilingual education. Right? They will explain in the mother tongue also. And experiments and remedies, the efforts taken to eliminate the gap between white and Maori secondary schools have borne fruit, but they are not adequate. So the main reason for the continuing disparity between the whites and Maoris are the conservative views and institutionalized discrimination against Maori students. So they are going to start new thing, woman home concept and extended family. They are experimenting in school organization. So this was launched in Southern Auckland. So about 250 students from grade 3 to 7 are housed, and the home operates with classrooms, activity rooms, laboratories, and common resources attempt to rectify the shortcomings of large school with separate children from each other. Now they are going to do something that means the similar thing, right? So they have realized that this is not going to do forever because the Maoris population is increasing. So definitely they are going to mix with white people. So they are making some changes. So the engaging homework in order to reduce overcrowding in Maori homes. And they are preparing large number of curriculum materials, including for Maori language, and can use in multi-ethnic classrooms. So dropouts. Even in Sri Lanka, we are talking about dropouts. So we have to check how many students are recruited in grade 1, whether the same number of students are there when they are going to O level, right? To see, you can see 10 to 15% or more than that dropout rates, right? So here they are giving special training for those dropouts. So even now in New Zealand, right? So the workers who are those who are working in the farms, right? So the less population was there because it was so cold. So the schools functioning in that area will have small number of students. Right? So for the working purposes, they were there. And then later, they will admit the child to a town site. Right? And there's no much these boutiques or shops or groceries. They have to travel for miles and miles to buy a bread, it seems, right? So there are huge area, right? But less people. So in New Zealand, of course, whites and Maoris. In South Africa, there are 4 groups, right? Now we are moving to Sri Lanka. This is very familiar to you. You know the background, because we ruled by British, right? And still we are using that education system. So the American missionary, they brought, right, and they were in the northern side, right? So educational policy, which was in operation until the regaining the independence in 1948, benefited all ethnic groups equally. In 1945, local languages were used as the media of instruction in primary classes, and from 1950, this policy was extended to secondary and tertiary levels, mother tongue education. In 1956, with the enactment of singular language as the official language, the inter-ethnic relation in Sri Lanka started to change. Right? So before that, all are in the same class, Sinhala, Tamil, Christian, Islam, Muslim, all are there and they are learning in English. So they were so happy and so friendly. I think still that relationship is going on. But after 1956, right? So the policy changed the mind of people. So during the 3-year period of 1973-75, several amendments to the admission policy were tried. 1973 standardization of marks, 74 modification and district quotas, 75 standardization of marks and district quotas. So do you know what standardization of marks is? Right. So in some area, people have more facilities and learn a lot, and they will produce good results. In some rural area, there's no teacher and less these opportunities, facilities. So in that case, they are not entering the university at all. That's what they decided to standardize and give quota. Because there is a disparity among schools. So we can't treat as the same. So even at that time, when they introduced standardization, so there is the criticism against that, and most of the people, they don't like that, right? So this is what happened. Percentage of Tamil students selected field of the study. See, engineering, medicine, all sciences, they have selected. It is possible that the change in the above figures have resulted not directly and solely from the method selection to the university, but also due to the better equalization of facilities for science education in case the reduction of the above percentage is significant. So they realized that most of the university entrance is going for northern people, because they are the people doing engineering, medicine, and all sciences, and all the science, medicine, this engineering is going to Tamil students, right? So that's what they introduced district quota scheme, right? And these are the procedures. That means 1975 only district quota, 76 30% district quota, 70% merit. 1978 30% merit and 55 district quota. Right, in 1997 this much. So what would you have been response of the monetary groups regarding the selection of student in district quotas? So even I think now they are not saying district quota, but for some districts, right? The the selection Z score is very low. So those children will get opportunity to enter the university with lower results. So how do these procedures benefit minority groups, and how do these procedures disadvantage for minority groups? So just think of that. So in summary, up to now, we have looked at several procedures used in selection of students to universities which influence inter-ethnic relations in Sri Lanka. Education in a country does not operate in a vacuum. It operates within the social, political, and economic context of a society. So you know about LTT, and several small Tamil militant youth groups have started demanding the state of their own, because it's the basic of this is the entrance of the university, because they got good results because of the schools introduced by British, stationary schools, a missionary school, and they are doing very good job. So all the students is scoring more marks, so they are demanding for entrance. The failure to maintain national unity due to the above situation has seen criticism being leveled against education for not fulfilling the role expected of it, the shortcomings of education that has been identified. So segregation of schools, universities by medium. Some countries lack any representation of some ethnic groups. Out of 10,000 schools, only about 100 function as bimedia schools. Even schools have disparities. Girls' school, boys' school, mixed school. Lack of linked language to facilitate exchange of viewers, mutual understanding in different ethnic groups. Even though English is a compulsory subject in the curriculum, they are not much interested in English. The perception that university admission policies were introduced deliberately to discriminate against Tamil-speaking students. And realizing the importance of education in bringing about national harmony, policy makers have taken several steps towards addressing this need. Changing official languages policy, Sinhala, Tamil, and English national language status, inclusion of Tamil language as a linked language in the curriculum. Even in the Tamil is also an official language. Inclusion of Tamil language as a linked language in the curriculum, gradually going back to the university admission policy, using merit as the criterion. Inclusion of subject content to induce inter-ethnic understanding and national unity. Even the second language introduced because of that, to reduce the barrier, language barrier. To what extent will these efforts to be successful? So re-socialization, preparation of adults, residential parents, those are the things, right? So the next chapter is issues of language in education, right? So you must be thinking, I'm directly explaining in the module, right? So last time, of course, I was prepared a separate thing. But in this chapter, right, the data are there, informations are there, that the same information will be there in everywhere, because they have already selected 4 countries. So those countries' problem is same everywhere, right? So now your homework is you have to compare these 4 countries, right? So you have to categorize things. Even you can tabulate, right? So like a table, you compare these 4 countries. That means under multi-ethnic society. So how is the life and education, social economic status, so education opportunities, right? In that way, you have to compare. So we'll have a discussion on that for at least 5 to 10 minutes, and we'll start the issue of language in education. If possible, please read this module and come, then it will be easy. And I think in the future classes, you also have to speak, right? So you all are doing in English medium, right? So if any explanation, if you need in Tamil, I can explain because I'm also Tamil. But the thing is, right, if you are trying to speak and do it in English, the Tamil, right? You will feel easy to do it in Tamil. You will neglect the English language, right? So you have to listen, read, write, because you are going to write the examination in English, right? Then okay. Even last time, I wanted to speak to you whether you can understand my language and that means the way I am delivering and whether it's too speed or is it okay, right? So will anybody can give an feedback on that?
Yes, ma'am. It's very clear. Can understand very well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comment. Any others? Right, so issues of language education, of course, it's teachers must be good in a language because you are going to deliver the lesson, right? The communication is very important for a teacher, voice control and everything, right? So next time, so we are going to learn issue of language in education, right? So if possible, please try to read this and then you will understand better, right? And you can ask questions also. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you very much. Good night, ma'am.
Good night.